wherever you look, all over the world, whether it's the Maya of Central America, you look at South America, Africa, anywhere, the symbolism of the snake, the crocodile, the representation of the reptilian is there. You go into Europe, and the Illuminati created cathedrals like Notre Dame in Paris. You've got the stately homes of the aristocracy, etc., with the gargoyles, the reptilian figures. It's been in our face, but we just somehow have had a blind spot to see it.
We human beings have idolized the reptile since the very supposed birth of our history. Go even further, much further. What was the creature which was honored by the ancient Greeks in their Delphic oracle? The python. What is the creature that stands next to the figures of the goddess Athena? The python. No matter where you look, go to China, where I once went. Who are the principal characters who brought wisdom to humankind? Creatures, part snake and part human being. One of whom I remember correctly was called Nu, a word which occurs also in Africa. And her brother was Hua, and sometimes it's turned into one creature, Nukwa, she. Everywhere we human beings have sacrificed our dignity as a species and attributed great intellect and great glory to reptiles, tortoises, turtles, lizards, snakes. Why? And even now, our fascination with the reptile and the amphibian has not stopped. In fact, it's growing. The popularity of all those dinosaurs in cartoon as well as in serious form, it makes me uneasy.
If we could just pick up this line of bloodlines, which the Sumerian tablets talk about, which you talk about, the interbreeding of humanity, and how the accounts explain that these crossbreeds were put into the positions of royal ruling power, almost as like demigods, middlemen between the gods, the Chitahuli, the reptiles, and the people. Those bloodlines, in my own research, became the European royal families and aristocracy, and today are the ruling, banking, business, and political and royal lines of the world. And the genealogy supports this increasingly. Is there a tradition also that the royal lines of Africa go back to the same source?
Please, you don't have to believe me. Go to Rwanda and there talk to the people there. They will tell you that the founding ancestors of their dynasties, the first kings who came from the sky, and they were called Imanugela, the ascending ones. Say, many African tribes believe that when the gods came down from the sky, they found human beings very, very stupid. And the human beings could not come before the gods in order to be taught. So what the gods did, and this is a story that you also find amongst the Dogoni people in West Africa, because the human beings were afraid of approaching these reptile gods. The reptile gods cold-bloodedly slaughtered one of their number and shed out its flesh with a specially gathered crowd of human beings. And these human beings, then became the ancestors of our first great kings. Now, sir, African kings jealously guarded their blood.
If the royal lines of Africa claim descendants from the same source, basically, have those lines interbred as obsessively as the European aristocracy and royal family, and not bred outside of those lines?
Yes, sir. Royalty had to marry royalty. That was one of the strictest laws in ancient times.
Which is obviously where we get the term the divine right of kings from. It's not actually God, it's actually the gods.
Yes, sir, yes. Royalty intermarried with royalty. You were not allowed to take a commoner as your senior wife if you were a king. You could take commoners after your senior wife.
After the genetics has been achieved.
Yes, sir. Now, another thing, it is like the Sangomas. Very, very strictly speaking, a Sangoma who was sometimes viewed as a king or a queen was not allowed to marry outside her caste or his caste. Sangoma had to marry Sangoma, otherwise the non-Sangoma blood would pollute the god blood inside the Sangoma.
The lady that I quoted in my books, Cathy O'Brien, who wrote her own book, Transformation of America, about being a mind-controlled slave of the American elite, she talks in there about seeing George Bush as president and vice president shapeshift into a reptile. And so many other people have told me this story of world leaders today changing into reptiles in front of their eyes and then changing back again. And Miguel de la Madrid, the president of Mexico at the time of George Bush, said to Cathy O'Brien, as she quotes in her book, that a reptilian extraterrestrial race interbred with the ancient Central American people because they needed to create bloodlines through which they could operate.
Yes.
And he said that these bloodlines were, in effect, today's world leaders. Does it fit with your knowledge, Credo, that the royal lines of the Chitauri reptilian human interbreeding that become the demigods and the royal families, etc., that they have gone on in Africa, as well as the rest of the world, to become the ruling lines and the ruling people of these countries?